been so long since I've used the smartboard. It was like back in March. I have to kind of remember how to do this. So no big surprise. We want to start off reviewing some vocabulary to make sure that we're all on the same page with this. And remember, if you can't hear me, if something cuts out or you need me to back up or repeat something, put that in the chat. I've got another computer where I can see that. So when we talk about points in math, we're talking about an exact location. And we usually represent a point with a dot. A point itself actually has no diameter or anything, but we're talking about that particular location. A curve is a series of connected points, so it may look like what we think of as a curved shape, or it may look like a straight line. It can stop, or it can keep going forever in one or both directions. A line is a straight curve, no bends. It has no ends, but we determine it by 2 points. So we have to know 2 points on the line to be able to give it a name. And so I'll be not original at all and call them A and B. And the notation I can use, I write the 2 letters down, and over it, I put a line, and it has both arrows because it does not end. And it does not matter which order I put those letters in. That just means the line that goes through both A and B. A line segment is a part of a line, and it does have ends. So if these are points X and Y, that is line segment XY, and we put a straight line with no arrows over it. We do not have to mess with putting dots on it when we write the line segment XY. And it's the same line whether we start at X and go to Y or start at Y and go to X. Rays have one endpoint and go forever in the other direction. So we need some letter for the endpoint, and we need another letter to tell us which direction it goes. So this would be PQ. We always write the endpoint on the left. So this would not be QP, and it would not even be QP with the arrow going the other way. And then a plane is a flat two-dimensional surface, so it could be the whiteboard. It could be a desktop. Could be a piece of paper. Except that it really goes forever in all directions. So the piece of paper is only a small part of the plane that contains it, since this really goes forever in every direction. So I think those are all review words that you've seen. Maybe the definitions are a little bit different. Easy not to remember them from one year to the next, or to get a couple of them scrambled, and especially easy to mix up the notation. Do remember, you all need to be taking notes on all of these. Have these in your notebook so you will save these for reference. Okay, another thing that we talk about a lot is angles. And angles are 2 rays that share an endpoint. We need 3 letters to name any angle. We need one that's the vertex, and we need 1 point on each of those 2 rays. This is angle ABC or angle CBA. But it is not angle BAC. BAC would have started at B, go to A, turn and go to C. So that would have been this angle up here, which is a totally different one. So anybody with questions on that? Okay, we also will be starting to learn a little bit down the road about something called polar coordinates. And it's going to be very important that we talk about the starting ray, and it is always starting at 0, 0 and going to the right. So when we start doing these with polar coordinate, it will be 0, 0 going to right, or the positive part of the x-axis. The terminal position will be the other ray of this angle, and we want to imagine that we take this arrow, this starting initial ray, and we hold it still, so it's like a spinner in a game, and we spin it around, but only that far. So the terminal position for this one is actually where I've drawn ray BA. The angle in between is what we are going to call the angle of rotation, because rotation just means spinning it around. Okay, somebody unmute. Tell me, what are some different kinds of angles that you know about, depending on how big they measure? What are the names of some of the different kinds of angles we can have? Anybody want to unmute? What? Okay, right angle is one of them that we have definitely learned in the past. And a right angle is, of course, one that measures 90 degrees. And we use the little box inside of it to mean 90 degrees. Somebody different, unmute and tell me a different kind of angle that you've learned in the past. Obtuse angles. And obtuse angles are ones that measure between 90 and 180 degrees. A lot of times we simply say they measure more than 90 degrees, but we want to start this year being specific that it's between 90 and 180 degrees. If we're starting to think about angles are how far we spin that spinner, when you play a game, there's many times when the spinner goes around 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 times before it stops. So we know from playing games that something could keep spinning more than 180 degrees. So that's why we want to talk about obtuse ones, or ones specifically between 90 and 180 degrees. And what else do we know from past years? Somebody? Great, and I love the way you're participating. It's going to take me a little while to figure out some good ways to do this. So right now I'm grateful for the volunteers. Acute angles measure between 0 and 90 degrees. We're not going to just say less than 90 degrees, because down the road we're going to learn about negative angles. And they are not always going to be acute. Anybody remember one more special case that we could have? This one kind of sneaks up on us a lot of times. A straight angle is when the two sides of the angle actually line up and we have 180 degrees. So if this was A and this was B and this was C, ray BA and ray BC would line up to make a straight line. So hopefully everybody's gotten those down and refreshing memory on those. Okay, I'm going to encourage you to take a new piece of paper or a section of your spiral notebook or a different notebook, whatever's going to work for you. I'm going to start giving you some special formulas and definitions that you're going to want to look back at, because you may not always remember them, and it will be easiest to find them when you're doing a problem a few weeks or months or even from now, or even next semester, if your formulas are all in one place. So what I would encourage you to do is to have one column, and we're just going to number these formulas 1, 2, 3, 4, and however far we get this year. And we're always going to put what lesson it's from in case we wanted to actually look back in the book or at some of our actual notes and examples from class on that. So the ones that we're going to be doing today will all be from lesson A. And the first one is vertical angles. Vertical angles are when we have two straight lines that cross. So I can't have one straight line and then another one that does something like this. That's not going to give us vertical angles. That doesn't work. This is one straight line going here, and one straight line is the black one that I haven't highlighted in red. Take any two angles that are across from each other, and they are what we call vertical angles. So in this picture, X and Y have the same measure. They're both acute. In this, and then I could also say that A and B are vertical angles, and they have the same measure as each other. And in this picture, A and B both happen to be obtuse. You can also have vertical angles when they all make right angles, and then you can't say, oh, two of them are acute and two obtuse, because they'd actually all four be the same. Does anybody remember the words complementary and supplementary? Those are going to be our next two that we do. Anybody remember the difference between those two? Okay, complementary ones are two ones that add up and make 90 degrees. If we draw them side by side, so here's the Y one and here's the X one, they would make a 90-degree angle when we put them together. They don't have to be side by side. I could have one here, and then I could have one turn some other way. Let's hope I can get this about right. They could also be somewhere separately, but as long as if we add them together, they make 90 degrees. They're called complementary. Supplementary ones add up to 180. So if we put them side by side, we would have a straight line here on the outside. And again, they don't have to be side by side either. I could have X like this. I could have Y, something like that. A lot of times students get the two vocabulary words mixed up, and you may have other ways of remembering them. And yes, Kyle, in just a moment, I will scroll up, type me, if it's a formula number or something you want me to go back up to. Let me just say that I remember them because C is before S in the alphabet, and complementary is 90, supplementary is 180, and 90 is smaller than 180. So is Formula 1 far enough to scroll back up to, or do you need me to go back up farther? And I appreciate people putting notes just like that in the chat, since nobody's here in the classroom to slow me down or ask a question. And I've got one more for this formula list, and then we're going to jump into some examples. A new one for you, or at least most of you, it hasn't been covered in the Saxon curriculum before, reflex angles. Reflex angles are, if we go around on the outside, how much more do we need to make a complete circle? So if X is our angle, and then we take Y, X and Y are reflex angles for each other. My first angle might look like this. In that case, my reflex angle would be this one. And A plus B would be 360 degrees. Couple heads going up and down, so I'll wait just a moment before jumping into our first examples of the year. And I'll be talking about expectations of what I'm looking for when you do some of these homework problems. Okay, hope we're ready. Are we ready for examples? Anybody need to type the word wait in the chat room real fast? Okay, thanks. And by the way, if you get any good ideas of how to manage this talking with you guys when you're all at home and I'm here, if other teachers have come up with a good idea that works really well in one of your other classes, send me an email or something. Share that idea with me. You guys can help me learn some tips and tricks of how to make this work better for you. All right, let's try our first example. And I particularly want you to pay attention to what work I say that you need to show. So you're going to have a lot of geometry problems that give you a picture and say find some of the missing values in that picture. You need to always give me an equation which has something to do with one of the formulas, and a reason. So anybody have any ideas of how I might figure out x? Is there a special relationship between x and anything else in that picture? Anybody have an idea what number on there could I put with the x to figure something out? Somebody unmute. Okay, the 30 degrees. And what's special about x and the 30 degrees when I put them together? Because they're going to add up to how much? If I put x and 30 degrees, anybody? What will they add up to if I put the x and the 30 together? What kind of angle do they make when put together? Okay, good. Good. That was a good idea, James, just to type it in the chat room. They do add up to be 90. So I've got to first write down x plus 30 equals 90. That's the equation from the formula that the two angles together make 90. And then the reason for that is going to be complementary angles. And you can do some abbreviating on there, but I need to understand that you know the relationship on those. After that, it's just solving. So type in the chat, what is x going to be? Okay, good job. If we subtract 30 on each side, x is going to be 60 degrees. I already have a degree sign in this picture, so if I just change the x to the 60, it has 60 degrees. So that is all I need there. Okay, now I need an idea for y. Anybody have an idea? Just unmute, and what can we do with y? What angle would y be related to? What number would help us there? Excellent. And I also had some of that typed in there for us, so we can say y plus 40 is 180 degrees, and the x and 30 were complementary. These are the supplementary angles. So subtract 40 from each side, and y is 140. And again, if I make any mistakes, be sure you say something to me on that. Are we good with that one? Okay, let's do another example then. So this time we have 3 different things to find. And we really could start with any one of these. So look at that. and see if you can type in an equation that we might use. And I should see some different equations popping up there. Don't necessarily worry about the reasons in here, but just, if there's something with the 110, if you can do 110 plus something, or do something with the 5x. Okay, so I'm seeing 5x and 110 are the same, and that is one place we can start. Anybody see some other places we might start? Okay, p equals 2y, that's also true, but it's not really going to help us if we don't already know either p or y. And so 5x plus 2y, very good. We can also start looking at some of those supplementary angles in there. So let's get started with some of the things that you wrote down. The one that I saw first was 5x equals 110. And if anybody remembers the name of those, unmute and shout it out. Or look at your list. What do we call them when they're across from each other? Or type it in the chat. Vertical angles. And then divide both sides by 5. And x is, I think it's going to be 22. And let's see, what else did I see on that? Get my markers in the right spot there. I think I also saw, what was it, p. I saw 5x plus 2y is 180. P and 2y are the same. But if I use 5x and 2y are 180, I do know x, so I could plug that in. But what if I did, those two might be a little bit easier first. Would those two work? Type the equation into the chat that I need for those two. Very good. P plus 110 has to be 180. And our reason for that is supplementary angles. And if we subtract 110 on both sides, P is 70. And that just leaves Y. And so we can either do 2y equals P, that those are vertical angles, or we could do 2y plus 110 equals 180, or 5x plus 2y equals 180, since we know what x is. But if p is 70 and 2y is 70, I think we end up with y needs to be 35. Anybody have a question on that example? Several different things to look at, and we kind of modeled that there are a bunch of different places you can start sometimes. You just kind of have to look and, well, what's related to what, which ones will be the most helpful, which ones will work to start with, and which ones might have to wait a little bit before we can use them. Okay, does anybody happen to remember what absolute value means? Perfect. Thank you. I love the way people are being nice and brave. It is the distance that a number is from 0. So if it's a positive number, the absolute value is just equal to that number. So if we want the absolute value of 5, 5 is a positive number. The absolute value of 5 is just 5. If the number is 0, 0 is 0 away from 0. It's already right there. This one looks a little bit weird with algebra, but if x is less than 0, so x is negative, so let's say x is negative 4. Then if I take the absolute value of x, I'm taking the absolute value of negative 4, which is positive 4. And so if x was minus 4, 4 is the opposite of x. So if it's a negative number, The absolute value is its opposite, meaning it is a positive number. So I would like for you guys to copy this example in your notes and get your answer on your paper, and then just in the chat room, write what you get just for your final answer. And you guys are doing fabulous. I'm seeing a whole bunch of negative number, or -1 as the final answer. If I took just the absolute value of -4, it would be +4. But then I have this minus sign out here so that that becomes a -4. Then I have the -2 plus, and if I take the absolute value of -5, that's a +5. And if we combine those, we do indeed have -1 as our answer. Okay, we don't have a ton of time and you don't have whiteboards, so just do these on your papers and then type your answer in the chat room. Just give me the answer here. On your homework set, you'd be writing down the equation and a reason, and then you'd show me the work, but just write down what your final answer is going to be on this. And then I'll put up the steps that would need to be in your work. But you only need to actually type your answer in the chat. And looks like we are doing great. We start off with y plus 65 is 180 because they are supplementary angles. Subtract the 65 and y is indeed 115. Okay, same thing in your work. Write down your equation and your reason, but only type your answer in the chat. I hope you're actually writing the equations and the reasons as fast as you guys are doing these. But you guys are doing great. You'd write down x plus 40 is 90 because they are complementary angles, and subtract the 40 from both sides, and x is 50. Okay, for this one, you have 3 different angles to find. So on your paper, write them down with reasons. In the chat, when you finished, write x equals, y equals, p equals with the numbers. Okay, looks like you guys are doing great. Y equals 89 because those are vertical angles, these two right across from each other. Then you could get either x or y next. X plus 89 is 180, and that's because those are supplementary. So x is 91. And once you know x, P and X are also vertical angles. So P is also 91. Whoops, didn't mean to hit that, sorry. All right, looks like you guys are doing great with that. And it is 8:11. So what I want you to do, stay in the Google Meet, but go ahead and find that problem set A paper. And I want you to go ahead and have some class time to get started so you don't feel quite so overloaded with stuff to do tonight, as we're still trying to get used to getting up this early and sitting at computer screens. If you need to kind of stand up and stretch as you get that, or even if you've got it right there, but you need to stretch for a minute, it has to get kind of tiring sitting in front of those screens, class after class after class, and not even enough time to really run to the bathroom or run to the kitchen to get a snack or anything. That was one of my frustrations yesterday. Those passing periods seemed extremely short. And what I want you to do is kind of look through the problem set and try whatever you think is going to be the hardest out of that for you. Try that first. If you have any questions, just type number 7, number 12. And I'm going to type